Hey, what's up, people? Pizzal here, and today I want to talk to you guys about the new 3-disc limited edition Blu-ray release for Dario Argento's The Stendhal Syndrome. Now, this is going to be partially a review of the film as well as a review of this Blu-ray release from the fine folks over at Blue Underground. Now, The Stendhal Syndrome is a pretty interesting film in the Dario Argento filmography. It's often referred to as the last great Dario Argento film. It's sort of the transition between the wildly inventive directing style that we know from Dario Argento from films like Deep Red, Suspiria, Phenomena, Opera, etc., to a more character-driven, narrative-driven form of storytelling. I've not been the biggest fan of Dario Argento's work post-Opera, so when I heard of the Stendhal Syndrome's reputation as being the last great Dario Argento film, I wanted to check it out. And as a matter of fact, I actually bought the first Blue Underground Blu-ray release for the film. I watched it, and my feelings were really mixed. Although the film had the same great visual flair as a lot of the earlier Dario Argento films, from a narrative point of view, from a storytelling point of view, the movie was just all over the place. It was plotting, it felt overlong, I just could not get into it. So when the opportunity came along to check out the new Blue Underground 3-disc limited edition Blu-ray release for the film, I jumped at it to give the film a second chance. And now, after having watched the film a second time, my feelings are still pretty mixed. The film revolves around a young policewoman played by Asia Argento who is trailing a murderer rapist stalking the streets of Italy. She tracks him to a museum where she becomes afflicted by the Stendhal Syndrome, which is a phenomenon in which people become so in awe of works of art that they pass out, they become very, very distressed. Sometimes they even develop amnesia. Argento's character soon succumbs to the Stendhal Syndrome. She passes out in the museum, which triggers this vivid hallucination involving her kissing a large fish in the ocean. When she comes to, there's a very helpful, handsome man there to help her up and out of the museum. He puts her in a taxi, which takes her back to her apartment. Unfortunately, this very helpful, handsome gentleman turns out to be the murderer rapist who has followed her back to her apartment. He attacks her, he rapes her. This begins her slow descent into madness, in which she begins to take on aspects of the murderer rapist, and the story gets even more convoluted from there. From a technical point of view, the Stendhal Syndrome is top notch. There are some great dreamlike visual set pieces in the film. The movie is just beautiful to look at. All the cinematography involving the museums, the artwork, the cathedrals. The movie just makes Italy in and of itself look like a beautiful piece of art. The music in the film is done by Ennio Morricone. It's fantastic. Asia Argento really carries this movie. Asia Argento is really what stood out for me the most the second time around watching the Stendhal Syndrome. Her performance is really almost like 3 performances in one. She carries this movie. This is one of her best performances, I think, hands down. Unfortunately, even the second time around, my biggest problem with the Stendhal Syndrome is just the story itself. It just feels so convoluted. And even by Dario Argento standards, it feels very convoluted. Because granted, Argento's not known for writing the most straightforward narratives for his films. However, with those earlier movies, they just have such a lush visual presence that you can sort of succumb to the visuals in the film and then let the story take you wherever it wants. With the Stendhal Syndrome, from a technical point of view, I can't say anything bad about it. I love Asia Argento's performance. Again, I think it's the best of her career. Just the story, I cannot get into it. If you're a fan of the Stendhal Syndrome, you definitely want to look into this new limited edition 3-disc Blu-ray release from the folks over at Blue Underground. It sports a brand new 2K restoration of the film from the original camera negative with some brand new extras. We get a Blu-ray of the film and a DVD of the film, as well as an additional disc with the extras from the first Blue Underground Blu-ray release. From a technical point of view, the picture quality and the sound quality, I thought both were pretty good. There was some controversy online involving the compression of the image on this Blu-ray. Now, those are some pretty technical aspects that just go right over my head from a layperson's point of view, just watching the film. I thought it looked pretty good. I did not compare it to the first Blue Underground Blu-ray release. However, but again, I thought the picture quality and the sound quality on this release was good to pretty good. This release comes with a very nice embossed slipcover. Here is the cover art there. It is a reversible sleeve. We have got 3 discs, as you can see there, and we have got a booklet on the film with a write-up about the Stendhal syndrome from Michael Gingold. Show you a couple of pages there. Here is the lovely Asia Argento, and here is the maestro himself, Mr. Argento. As far as extras are concerned, on disc 1 we have 3 Shades of Asia, a brand new interview with star Asia Argento. It is 20 minutes in length. Ms. Argento discusses how the movie was initially to be shot in the US with Bridget Fonda in the lead. She discusses how the Stendhal syndrome is one of the movies on which she suffered the most due to the extreme heat in Florence and the unbelievably cold temperatures of the water in the underwater sequence in which she kisses the large fish, because Dario insisted that that sequence be shot in the ocean and not in a heated pool. She discusses how difficult it was to shoot some of the more extreme scenes in the film. She says that of all the movies she was done with her father, that the Stendhal syndrome is one that she loves the most and that it had a profound effect on her as a young woman. Very nice interview with Ms. Argento. Next up, we have got Prisoner of Art, a brand new interview with co-writer Franco Ferrini. It's about 13 and a half minutes in length. Mr. Ferrini discusses collaborating with Argento on the story for the film and the ideas he contributed to it. He discusses meeting with producers in the U.S. to shoot the film in the States with Kim Basinger in the lead, but those plans fell through. He discusses how he would have preferred the film to have ended, how he would have written the ending if he had any say so, which actually sounded like a pretty good ending, I do have to say. Very nice interview there with Mr. Ferrini. Next up, we have Sharp as a Razor, a brand new interview with special makeup artist Franco Casani. It's about 10 minutes in length. Mr. Casani discusses the importance of movie blood on this type of film. He also describes how you make different batches of colored blood for a film like this. And depending on how a certain scene is lit, depends on what color blood you get. A lighter shade of red, a darker shade of red. He even discusses using a orange-ish blood as well. Mr. Casani also discusses how Argento likes to be involved in the placement of the blood on a scene and how the quantity of blood used in a particular scene depends on what mood Argento is in at the time. I thought that was pretty interesting. Brief but interesting interview there with Mr. Casani. We get an audio commentary with Troy Howarth, author of the book So Deadly, So Perverse. I did not watch any of the commentary with Mr. Howarth. However, we get a theatrical trailer and a poster and still gallery on disc 1. On disc 2, which is the extras from the 2007 Blue Underground Blu-ray release, we have an interview with Dario Argento, in which Argento recalls that he was casting trauma in New York when he first heard about the publication of the book, The Stendhal Syndrome, and he became fascinated by the affliction and its symptoms. He discusses his own experience with a touch of the Stendhal Syndrome while visiting the Parthenon. Argento discusses the hoops he had to jump through to shoot inside the museums in Florence. He discusses working with cinematographer Giuseppe Rotunno and all that he brought to the film. He discusses working with his daughter Asia and the relationship on set as actress and director. He discusses working with composer Ennio Morricone and the music Morricone created for the film. Argento feels that the Stendhal Syndrome is one of his most interesting and beautiful films. Nice interview with Mr. Argento, about 20 minutes in length. Next up, we have Inspiration, with an interview with psychological consultant Graziella Magarini, It's about 22 minutes in length. Ms. Magarini discusses her experiences with patients suffering with symptoms of Stendhal syndrome and how she and her colleagues studied the affliction, which led to her writing the book that inspired Argento to make the film, The Stendhal Syndrome. Very interesting interview with Ms. Magarini. Next up, we have special effects, an interview with Sergio Stivoletti. It's about 16 minutes in length. Mr. Stivoletti discusses working on Phenomena with Argento and how that collaboration led to Opera and then the Stendhal Syndrome. He discusses a conversation he had with Tom Savini, in which Savini told him about the uprising of digital effects in the U.S. and how he implemented digital effects in the Stendhal Syndrome. Some very early digital effects, I have to say, and some not very good digital effects in the Stendhal Syndrome. Next up, we have Assistant Director, an interview with Luigi Cozzi. It's just under 22 minutes in length. Mr. Cozzi discusses the first time he met Argento when he was working as a journalist for an Italian horror magazine. He requested to conduct an interview with Argento, and they became fast friends, and Argento eventually asked him to work as his assistant director on Four Flies on Grey Velvet. He discusses working with Argento on Phenomena and Two Evil Eyes, as well as being partners in a store called Profondo Rosso, specializing in horror collectibles, and it even has an underground museum with props and original materials from Argento's films. I don't know if that store is still around, but that would be that'd be a fun visit, I do believe. Mr. Cozzi also discusses how the Stendhal Syndrome was first to be made in the U.S. with Bridget Fonda in the lead. She dropped out, and then Daryl Hannah was cast, but eventually they moved the production to Italy with Asia Argento in the lead. So, Asia Argento said Bridget Fonda was going to be in the film. Luigi Cozzi says Bridget Fonda, and then Daryl Hannah. And I do believe Kim Basinger was also mentioned by somebody as originally going to play the lead in this film. So that's pretty interesting. Mr. Cozzi discusses working on the digital effects in the film. He discusses how the band Deep Purple were originally going to do the music for the film before Ennio Morricone got involved. Very interesting interview there with Mr. Cozzi. And last but not least, we've got production designer, an interview with Massimo Antonello Galing. It's about 23 minutes in length. Mr. Galing discusses working with Argento to design the sets and locations for the Stendhal Syndrome. This is a loaded Blu-ray release from the folks over at Blue Underground. If you are a fan of the Stendhal Syndrome, you definitely want to look in to this limited edition 3-disc release. If you've not seen the Stendhal Syndrome, this would be a good way to introduce yourself to the film. I'll put a link to Blue Underground's website down in the description below. If you've seen the Stendhal Syndrome, please let me know what you think of it down in the comments section. Do you think it is truly Argento's last great film? Were there any films post Stendhal Syndrome that you would say are great Argento movies? Let me know down in the comments section below. If you like this video, please leave it a thumbs up. If you're not following me on social media, those links are in the description. They're also right around here. As always, thanks so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Take care, and until next time, peace. Say hello to the internet, Jeremy.
Hello to the internet.